So George Groves will be defending his WBA super middleweight championship against Chris Eubank Jr. February next year. So in about 3 months. This is a good fight. I think this is a fight that I think this is a very credible win, in my opinion. I think this is a credible win for, let's say, if Chris Eubank Jr. wins. If George Groves wins, I think it's a decent win. But I've always said that I don't think Chris Eubank Jr. has the best resume as of yet. But that's what I'm saying. If Chris Eubank Jr. were to win, it would be a better win for someone like Chris Eubank Jr. because, in my opinion, I think George Groves is a proven fighter. So I will be giving Chris Eubank Jr. a lot of credit if he were to pull it off and beat George Groves. Like, I would give Chris Eubank Jr. more credit than I would give George Groves. Because, like I said, I think when it comes to world level, I think Chris Eubank Jr. is not that proven. But George Groves is more proven. So that's why I wouldn't be that high on George Groves for beating Chris Eubank Jr. But like I said, George Groves is proven, so I would be very high on Chris Eubank Jr. I've always said this. I think that Chris Eubank Jr. Defeats George Groves because I've been very impressed by Chris Eubank Jr. I think he's a really good inside fighter. I think Chris Eubank Jr. is one of those guys that he knows how to fight well on the inside. He throws really good uppercuts, really good body shots. He knows how to get in an opponent's face. I think his problem is when a guy tries to outbox him. I think that's his problem. But if you go on the inside with Chris Eubank Jr., you're going, that's what he wants. When it comes to George Groves boxes on the back foot. He has the ability to do that. But George Groves has always been one of those guys that he tends to fight his opponent's fights. I said this in my previous video on why I think Chris Eubank Jr. beats George Groves. Even against Jamie Cox that he fought the other time, 2 months ago or whatever, or was it a month ago? He was, he didn't look that good against Jamie Cox. He got the knockout with the body shot, but Jamie Cox was going on the inside against George Groves, and George Groves, having a lot of machismo, was actually fighting toe-to-toe with Jamie Cox, and he was giving Jamie Cox the opportunity to land. So I think he's going to be doing the exact same thing. He did the same thing with Carl Froch. He has a habit of, because he has a lot of machismo, he stays away from his game plan, and he actually fights his opponent's fight. So I think he's going to do the exact same thing with Chris Eubank Jr. Again, I'm actually a fan of George Groves. I was rooting for him when he fought that Shuinov guy because I felt bad that George Groves had lost several attempts. He lost his, he failed his attempt against Badabu Jack. He also failed twice when he fought Carl Froch. So I always felt bad that George Groves never became a champion. So that's why I was rooting for him when he became a champion against the Fedor guy, the Shuinov guy. And he won the WBA super middleweight strap because I was happy for him. I was like, okay, he finally became a champion, But I just think that right now he's kind of like, he has a lot of, even though he has more experience than Chris Eubank Jr., especially at world level, he's fought the better opposition. I think right now Chris Eubank Jr. is at the prime of his life. He doesn't have as much mileage on his tank than George Groves. George Groves has been in a lot of wars, a lot of tough fights. And I think that's put a lot of mileage on his tank. Chris Eubank Jr. is way fresher than George Groves in terms of damage he's taken as a professional fighter. Against Billy Joe Sanders. Billy Joe Sanders beat him, but he didn't beat him up. He just outboxed him, really. And out-slicked him, but he didn't beat him up. You know what I'm saying? I think Chris Eubank Jr. is going to have a better engine. I think Chris Eubank Jr. has a better engine than George Groves up close. So I think what's going to happen is I think you're going to see Chris Eubank Jr. outwork George Groves. George Groves has a tough chin. I know he got knocked out by Carl Froch, but Carl Froch was a big puncher himself. I think if this fight does get stopped, I think it'll get stopped in later rounds. I don't think it'll just be like in 2 rounds or like 4 rounds. I think because Chris Eubank Jr. is not the biggest puncher in my opinion. I think I know he knocked out that guy, but in his last fight, but I think he's not the biggest puncher. And George Groves has been in there with a lot of big punchers. Badabu Jack, Carl Froch. He's been in there with a lot of big punchers, so I don't think he's going to be, blown away by the punching power of Chris Eubank Jr. like I said, it would probably be stopped only by like accumulation of punishment from Chris Eubank Jr. And I believe Chris Eubank Jr. is going to be catching George Groves with uppercuts a lot. I want to see George Groves go to Chris Eubank Jr.'s body. But if it was up to me, I would tell George Groves to like move around the ring and like use your feet to outbox Chris Eubank Jr. But again, George Groves is one of those guys. He's a stubborn guy. Excuse me. He's very stubborn, so he likes to fight his opponent's fight. So I don't think he's going to be able to do that. And I'm definitely picking Chris Eubank Jr. I think he's going to be the next WBA heavyweight, super middleweight champion, and then he'll be the WBA and the IBO super middleweight champion, and then that'd be pretty cool. And then hopefully James DeGale, I know he's been injured, he hasn't fought in months. Hopefully then James DeGale could fight Chris Eubank Jr. Or even if George Groves were to win, he could fight George Groves for a rematch because I'm pretty sure he wants to avenge his loss to. I think he has only one loss to George Groves, right? I believe. Yeah, he does, right? Yeah. It's been a while since I checked James DeGale's resume. But, yeah, that's actually interesting. I actually think that James DeGale is a tougher fight for Chris Eubank Jr. than George Groves because James DeGale is good at fighting, keeping it long and actually moving in and out. I think he's better moving in and out than George Groves. But again, James DeGale himself is a guy that tends to fight his opponent's fight sometimes. Like against Bada Jack, he was standing in the middle a lot. He was exchanging a lot and he got hit a lot. So, yeah. But yeah, James DeGale is tough, but I'm definitely leaning towards Chris Eubank Jr. against George Groves, and against James DeGale. I think that's a toss-up fight. I think James DeGale has the ability to also beat Chris Eubank Jr. But like I said, he makes mistakes where he fights in his opponent's fights just like George Groves. So yeah, this is a good fight. I think it's a good fight. I think it's a fight that is good for the UK. Is good for boxing, in general. And yeah, that's all I have to say, guys. I'm out.